everyone, welcome to Home Talk. I'm Holly of hollygrace.ca. In this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to make a vintage style wired laundry hamper. So I've been looking online for a long time for one of these, or even when I visit home decor stores, and they're really pricey. So I've decided it's time that I DIY my own. So let's jump right into it. So to start off our laundry hamper, what I have here is a round piece of wood. This I actually repurposed. It was a stool that had broken, so all the legs had fallen off of it. I'm gonna use this. But if you don't have a wooden stool that's broken that you can repurpose, you can always get a pine wood round. You can use one of those as well. You can get them at any home improvement store. So first thing I'm gonna do is, I don't like the way this was painted, so I'm gonna sand this down and take it back down to the bare wood. I'm going to be using my Ryobi Power Sander with some 80 grit sandpaper.
When sanding my piece of wood, before I even picked up my sander, I made sure to remove any staples or nails from the surface. One staple or nail can ruin a fresh piece of sandpaper instantly. The paint on my piece of wood did sand off quite nicely, so I think it was just painted with an acrylic or latex paint. I continued to sand my piece until the paint was removed as fully as I wanted it, making sure that I also sanded the sides of my wood round because this will be seen on our laundry hamper.
Okay, now with my piece all sanded, we are going to be staining this. I'm not too worried about sanding it perfectly down to the bare wood because I am going for that rustic beat up look. So you'll notice that I left a bit of the paint behind and I didn't really sand it down all that well right to the bare wood. It's not that big of a deal. If you want that more finished, complete look and you're working with something old, make sure you sand it right down to the bare wood. So to stain my piece, I'm going to be using this Varathane wood stain in the shade Provincial. So I'm just going to brush the stain on using a foam brush. And this is just a handy little tip for those of you that don't stain very often. When you buy your stain from the home improvement store, about 10 minutes before you're going to use it, I like to take my stain container and with the lid on, I place it upside down for about 10 minutes because what happens when the stain containers sit around for a long time, all the color pigments sit on the bottom of the can and you don't get that true rich color. So you want to make sure that you get those pigments mixed thoroughly, and you can give it a good shake, but I just find flipping the can over and keeping it stored upside down for about 10 minutes really helps gets the richest color when I'm working with stain. Now that our stain is on, we're just going to give it a little wipe with the lint-free rag. And with stain as well, if you want a darker color, you just do a second coat of the stain. But I'm okay with this one here. And we also want to make sure that we do get the edges of our round as well. So we're just going to brush on the edges too. And then again, wiping that with the cloth. Okay, so we are gonna give this a few minutes to dry, so I'm just gonna set it aside and we're gonna move on to the next step. Next, I'm gonna be taking some galvanized wire mesh, and this is what we're gonna be using to make the surrounding of our laundry hamper. But I do need to cut it down a bit, it's a little bit long. So what I'm gonna be using for my laundry bag is a king-size pillowcase. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my pillowcase here. So I'm just going to size up how long I need to make my cage. So we have to take into consideration that we're going to be folding the end of the pillowcase over. So I'm just going to take the length of the pillowcase here, and that's how long I'm going to make the body of my hamper cage. So the length of my pillowcase, not counting the end that we are going to roll over, is 3 feet. So we are going to cut our wire cage to be 3 feet in height.
When working with the galvanized wire, I do recommend wearing gloves so that you do not injure or cut your fingers or your hands. The edges of the wire fencing can get very sharp.
In order to see how much we need to cut off widthwise, I'm just going to wrap it around my wood round so that I know how much I need to roll out. So this will give me an idea of how much we need here, and I can always trim off more later if I need to. I'm just doing a rough guesstimate here. I'm gonna hold my finger there so I know where I'm cutting.
To cut the wire fence, I used a pair of wire cutters. You could also use tin snips as well to do this. Working down the length of the wire fence, I continued cutting into sections, just cutting it off really close to the piece where I was cutting. So the lengthwise wire, I made sure to make my cut close to that. This is important because if you ever want to reuse the next section of fence, you have that long pieces of wire hanging out to connect it to something. I continued to cut along until the entire fence was disconnected from the roll. I placed some heavy objects on the fence to keep it from curling back, and then I measured the 3 feet, which is going to be the height of my laundry hamper, and then I cut across the fence horizontally so that we have the right height for our hamper. I did this in the same fashion that I did to cut the width of the fence, just working along with my wire cutters. And it's important to note that I did keep the pieces a little bit longer this way. That is so that we have wire to wrap underneath of the wood round to attach it to our base.
Now the cut side is what we're going to use to attach our cage to our wood round because we have these pieces hanging off, okay?
To attach my base, I used a stapler, and all I did was just take those cut pieces and then I folded them in and stapled them down with the stapler. So I just worked my way around the wood round, going step by step, folding each piece of wire and then stapling it in place. The wire that I'm using is pretty pliable, so it folds really easily, so I was able just to use my finger to push it into place and then use my stapler to staple. If your wire is a lot tougher and you can't push it down with your fingers, you can always just use a pair of pliers to push it into place. Once I had my base securely on, all I had to do was attach the opening where the mesh wire meets. So all I had to do was take the off-cut pieces and wrap them around each other. To make sure that they're really secure, I just used a pair of pliers just to kind of crimp them together to make sure that they wouldn't come apart.
Next I have these little caster wheels that I got just at my local home improvement store, and we are going to attach them to the bottom of our piece of wood. Now these are the holes where the bottom of the stool went in, and they're evenly marked out for me, so it just worked out for me that way. So I'm just going to put my wheels right over those marks.
I used tiny screws and a drill to attach my wheels, and then once that was done and all 4 were attached, I could stand up my laundry hamper, and all I had to do was put in the laundry bag. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I am using a king size pillowcase, and I like the king size pillowcases because they're very long and they work perfectly for this project, but you could also buy a laundry bag if you can't find a pillowcase long enough. Once my laundry hamper was complete, I could put it in place in my home, and I am left with a gorgeous industrial piece of decor. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, I've always wanted one of these, but the real vintage ones are pricey and the high-end decor replicas are as well. I managed to make my own for half the price, and I can take pride knowing that I put it together with my own 2 hands. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this project, and I hope you will check out my site, hollygrace.ca, and my social media for more great ideas.
Thank you so much for tuning into Home Talk, and we'll see you next time.